welcome. This is our new series we're making called Deep Dives. We're just gonna go in depth on a lot of subjects and so that we can train our personnel so they can learn a lot and you guys can get some of that tasty treats as well, you know? Protective. We're gonna be deep diving into these air dry inks, super deep. And I'm gonna go over what kind of things we can print on, some techniques of why we use different meshes, some squeegee techniques, and then also obviously what kind of inks they are so that you know what you can print on and stuff. Let's go over here. Beep, beep. This is where I keep a lot of my inks here. And I keep gloss vinyl, Coragloss, enamel, epoxy, and I also keep my all-purpose inks on this side with some pigments. Okay, so let's go over just top to bottom. Enamel. Enamel is a one-part ink. All these one-part inks, I should say, except for the epoxy. Things that I use enamel on are like powder-coated items. Steel, like raw steel, you can use enamel on. It's not paint because it's more like solvent-based, it's not water-based. Enamel, that's kind of what that's used for. So you just take it out. This stuff really likes to harden quick in the containers. And so what we like to do, here's a good example, right? So here's one that we haven't used a lot. So the lid is still clean, nice and clean. But when they start getting dirty, we like to put saran wrap so that it just keeps all the moisture inside and creates some little ecosystem. Okay, so that's enamel. Any questions? I didn't think so. Next one, let's go over to gloss vinyl. Is really good on obviously vinyl, obviously. It's also good for other sort of like faux leather and things like that. It actually can work on plastics as well. It just kind of depends on what the plastics are made out of, which you don't know. That's why we do a lot of testing. Anyway, that's what kind of gloss vinyl is. Again, you got to test all these inks on whatever you're printing on. This is Coragloss. Coragloss is really good for plastic. It just kind of depends on what plastic, right? So what we like to do is whenever we take like a part or something we're gonna be printing on, we like to have a sample where we can really test which inks are gonna adhere the best, especially against chemicals or even just scratching off. And so that's something to think about when you are looking for the right ink. So that's Coragloss. Epoxy, honestly, will go on almost everything. This one's a two-part series, so you'd take your ink and then you would use 5% of the catalyst and mix it together. And this will go bad, whatever you mix together. Yeah, it's just gonna be used up. It's a one-time use kind of thing. My all-purpose inks, and they're exactly what you think they are. They're good for virtually everything, but they don't work on everything. These are really good for a lot of plastics and paper and wood and stuff like that. Again, you just want to test and make sure things work, but that's what I use these a lot more for. You can mix inks, but you can't cross mix inks with different kinds. So when you're mixing ink, if you're gonna mix all-purpose color, you gotta use all-purpose inks. We have some thinners, and so this is the VF 182. If you go in here farther, I have a 9050, and those are used to thin down the inks. You can also use citrusol on all-purpose, and not everything, but you can also use lacquer thinner, but they like mineral spirits, but it doesn't really work as well. That's kind of your options for thinning down the ink if it's a little bit too thick. So epoxy for like glass and tile as well. So we're gonna use the 80E series of ink, and then I'll show you an example on this piece of glass that I pulled from my computer upstairs, and I'll print it and kind of let you see what happens when I do that and kind of the process I use while I'm printing, you know, large amounts of items or whatever. You know, out in the general production area where we're using plastisol and water-based inks, those can only be cured with heat. And so that's why they can sit out. I mean, water-based can dry over time as well, but like plastisol ink needs to have heat attached to it in order for the molecules to adhere to the fabric and the apparel, right? With air dry inks, the reason we call them air dry is because they dry with the air. They can cure just with time. They don't need a temperature. They can cure faster with temperature, but that's not always the best thing because they could be deformed, like the bubbles wouldn't have time to settle. And so with air dry, when I refer to that, it's things that we don't want to have sent down the dryer to be heated up because it might ruin the integrity of the item we're printing on. So for example, if we're printing on this faux leather and it just so happens that when we send it down the dryer, it shrinks and shrivels up, that's not a good solution to use plastisol ink. So we would use air dry ink so that we don't have to deform, the product that we're printing on won't get messed up. So that's the big difference between air dry and our general plastisol inks. So now I'm gonna kind of take you through the process of printing an item. For this one, I'm just kind of doing my own thing. Thought it'd be sick to put this Badger logo up on my computer, throw it on the piece of glass and kind of show you how that's gonna work. Really quick, let me tell you why we use a higher mesh screen with air dry. These inks are a lot thinner than Plastisol and they are gonna get cured by air. And so to have a thinner, higher mesh screen helps a lot with that, because then you can keep it pre-flooded. They won't have blowout like we mentioned in the last video we just posted. We just don't want to have ink everywhere, right? We want to put it where we want it. You got to be a sniper, you know, you want to get that exactly where you want and get a nice print. And so, yeah, so that's why I'm using a higher mesh, nice tension. That'll give us a really beautiful print, and that's what the mesh is about. All right, so we're gonna throw this into our press. The substrate I'm printing on, I put down my piece of glass right here. Just kind of got it roughly where I want it. Right now it's just sitting on a couple pieces of off contact, which is fine. Again, I'm doing a one-off, so I don't have to make a repeatable setup, if that makes sense, because I'm gonna print one and that'll be it. And so I just mainly need it to be level without moving a lot, right? And so I'm just lining it up. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line it up to this edge here so I can have a straight shot at where I'm gonna be printing it. And then what I can do is I can take my ruler and create the position on the actual piece of glass. And so I'll take my ruler that I have conveniently, and for those that wonder, this is metric and standard, pretty classy. So I'm gonna take my ruler that I found and I'm gonna measure the width to get my center, right? And this is perfectly square, so I'm not too worried about having it be organic. And this in standard is about 14 and an eighth. So I'm gonna go to metric, and this is 36 centimeters across. So half of 36, 18. And so that'll give you my first mark of 18. What you can do is put a piece of tape and then you can make a line. But in this case, I'm just gonna leave this here and I'm gonna mark on the outside so I can know where to go. All right, so now that I have my print exactly centered to the piece of glass, now I'm gonna actually prepare the glass for taking the ink. Sometimes people bring in glass and it's just got finger smudges on it. They've been eating Cheetos for 3 days and they've just been touching it everywhere. We like to take some denatured alcohol and just wipe it really carefully, and so that it has a good adhesion of our ink, so it's a permanent process. So grab your ink. I grabbed a butter knife. All right, so I'm gonna tear out my scale and zero it out to my cup. And then I'm gonna take as much ink as I want. This is for one print, and the ink is basically, it's like a one-time use, right? So we could probably use this for a couple hours, but after that, it just hardens, just like epoxy. And I'm just gonna pour in 1 gram of catalyst. Okay, so with this, you wanna mix it. And then when you're done mixing, keep mixing. For this case, it's my item and I'm gonna be fine. I also picked up a squeegee along my trip over there to the other side of the shop. I grabbed a squeegee just a little bit bigger than my print. I'm gonna be using a really sharp 70-90-70 durometer squeegee. I'll probably print it on this side because most of my guys print this way, but I'll print it this way so that I can get the sharper side. I'll set that in there, and now I'm gonna put my ink inside. And I like to, okay, let's go over a couple tips actually while we're talking, okay? This is air dry video, not a how to print a computer screen video or whatever. Here's a tip with air dry or water-based or whatever. It's really slippery. It's a lot different than Plastisol. And if you put ink in there, your squeegee is gonna slide and it's gonna sit like this in the screen. Not by choice. It's gonna go like this and it's gonna slide on down. And then guess what you're gonna do? Because you didn't think about it. You're gonna bring it down and it's gonna fall in your ink and you're gonna be pissed and say all the cuss words. Anyway, say your most creative swear word when that happens. Falls in, it's annoying, you have to clean up your whole screen. It actually ruins your print as well. So here's the solution. We grab a special stick and I take a dowel, like a 1/2-inch dowel or 3/4 inch, put it through my squeegee. Bada boom, bada bang, doesn't touch. And if you wanna be extra careful, you can put some tape around it, make it real beautiful. And then it's always low, it's always good. Low and slow. Sounds like a Matthew McConaughey quote. So I'm gonna take my ink. Like I was saying before, our ink will start drying relatively quickly. And when you're doing a production run with air dry, you wanna make sure that you're always back flooding your image so that it doesn't dry out and get hard in the screen. And so with this one, it doesn't matter because I'm only doing one print, but I'll demonstrate it. I might be doing 2 prints on this. I'm not sure on the opacity because there should be some bubbles when we print it. Not that we want them there, but there are gonna be some bubbles. And if you wait long enough and let it air dry like it's supposed to without using heat, then those bubbles will settle and it should look great. So what I'm gonna do is pre-flood my screen, set it down, print, lift it back up and show you the results. So that project's now done. Just the biggest things with air dry is that they cure with the air, right? So you wanna wait. You can force cure them faster, but it's not always the smartest thing by using heat or by using fans or anything like that. In my case, I'm gonna let it just dry and cure properly so that the air bubbles all settle. And then yeah, then just go enjoy your product. Deep dive. Show my stats because they suck. All right, so that was air dry inks. And again, just a deep dive into kind of what the inks are and what they can do. So whenever I say air dry, that's like what I'm referring to. So yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe, throw your comments in there. We'll try to answer every single one. Peace out.